Yeah, and so shall we start now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And how everyone? Welcome everyone. It's great to see you joining us today. I'm Dr. Hilary Wu. I think I'm the only one from Hong Kong, and that this is my first time to serve as a SING facilitator, and that I'm joining SING recently, and that I'm an assistant professor from Hong Kong Metropolitan University, and I will be facilitating this seminar today. And that as part of building webbots, we will use partners for introductions and that please add your name, your institution, and your areas of our expertise there. This will help us to get to know each other. And that today's topic is widening the doors in higher education, and that we want to have some implications for engaging underrepresented students because this getting more important because of the majority of students are now because there are not of underrepresented students in current higher education, and that while rating yeah, and this is for the further information about if you want further information about HERDSA online engagement in HE, please contact Dr. Amanda, and that you can also sign up for the same by sending an email to HERDSA. This group is focused on the phenomenon of online higher education student engagement and the aspect that both hinder and foster this engagement. And we will now move to the acknowledgement of country. I'd like to invite Dr. Ali Emirates, who kindly agreed to lead us. May I invite as Associate Professor Ali Emirates?
Amazing. Thank you, Hilary. Welcome, everybody. I'm absolutely honored and delighted to acknowledge our country today. And in the spirit of this being a online SIG event for higher education engagement and the fact that we're talking about traditionally underrepresented cohorts, I'd like to do today's land acknowledgement ever so slightly differently in a way that encourages the spirit of connection. I had the absolute pleasure of working with some Indigenous colleagues with the South Australian government. And so I learned a lot about the incredible value of connecting not just with the colleagues, elders, past, present, and emerging from your own lands, but also from the lands that are your birthplace, where you were born. And so today I'm coming to you from South Australia in Adelaide. And as such, I'd like to acknowledge the lands of the Kaurna people and pay my respect to elders, present, and emerging here. But I'd also like to invite you in the chat panel to not only acknowledge the lands on which you come to us with, but also the lands that you were born on. And if you are unsure which lands or who the traditional custodians are of the lands that you were born, take this opportunity now to quickly have a look. For me, I am a Canadian. I come from Ontario in Canada. And so I'd like to acknowledge the lands of the Algonquin people. And in the spirit of coming and engaging and recognizing the diversity, it gives us an opportunity not just to connect in the moment of land acknowledgement with where we are present at the moment, but look across all the diverse lands that we started off in and thinking about when we come to higher education engagement. This is so important when we ask our students to come and engage with us, and particularly those traditionally underrepresented cohorts or groups, to instill a sense of you belong here, you're valued here, and we want to connect with you. So in that spirit, I say thank you for having me to do the land acknowledgement. I look forward to seeing all the incredible lands on which you were born, and who knows, maybe we'll have some overlaps and sharing in those spaces. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ali, and that And that if you are also looking for the opportunity with HERDSA, here is the what is HERDSA? HERDSA is the Higher Education Research and Development Society of Australians, is a scholarly society for people like us who committed to the advancement of higher and tertiary education, and that these are what we offer. For example, HERDSA fellowship, SOTO modules, her and annual conferences, research grant and awards, and special interest group. If you are interested, please scan the QR code. And without further ado, let's take a quick look at the agenda slide so we are all aligned on today's flow. First, we have already done the introduction and acknowledgement of country, and that we are also talking about the opportunities with HERDSA, and then we are going to have a research participation about writing the story in higher education's implication for engaging underrepresented students from Associate Professor Alex Bang, and that we will first discuss about the context and background and the method and the findings, and we will have break our rooms such that we are more get to know each other and for our sharing of our own ideas, and then we will review the shared document, and then we have a wrap up, and then we will also provide you some details about the upcoming conference and then more about the HERDSA event.
Thanks, Hilary, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. And Ali, that was a very, very beautiful acknowledgement and very innovative in lots of ways as well. So thank you. And we might get started. I also wanted to acknowledge that the research that we're sharing today, it was on one of the first slides, but there's a significant group of colleagues that have come together for this from a number of universities, and it was on the first slide. So yes, it's a collective sharing of key insights from a wonderful study. And I'd like to introduce Professor Pushpa, and she's going to share the context and common ground behind the motivation for this study.
Thank you, Alice. Welcome, everyone. So I'm just going to lay out some of the common ground and context for the study. So globally, there's definitely a priority in higher education to increase equity of access for students so that they can successfully complete their degrees. And our whole study then looks at the context of widening the doors for underrepresented students, but it definitely comes with significant responsibility for different stakeholders, including our students, our teachers, our learning designers. And we know that online teachers are definitely experiencing a significant effort in terms of devising strategies to enhance engagement in this online space, especially. But there is limited attention, however, in terms of how online environments or practices require a certain nuancing, and we'll use that word a lot today, to respond to the diversity of different learning styles in terms of considerations to enable equity for students to flourish. Next slide, please, Alice. And so the university accords themselves have evidenced this increased participation for equity students in this space. And there's definitely a higher trend for students to gravitate towards online learning. So it's a very interesting read if you haven't already looked at the outcomes of the Australian Universities Accord. Next slide, Alice, please. So online learning obviously is an extremely attractive option for underrepresented students, mainly due to the flexibility that it enables. And students who tend to opt for online studying tend to be mature age students. They're more likely to be female, have family and caring responsibilities, and typically also consider that they're from regional, rural, and remote locations, and potentially studying part-time as well. There's a recent study from the Country of Universities Center, the CUC program, that indicates that 84% of students are enrolled in a typically fully online mode of study. Next slide, please, Alice. So there's definitely also the need to consider emerging digital technology, which has not only increases access to higher education, but has also widened and opened doors for underrepresented students. And we already know that teachers are embracing a whole range of online engagement strategies to support learning and success for these students. And in this event today, we will actually then look at a study that employed a methodology using think tanks, where we not only surveyed or talked to equity experts, but also experts in the online teaching space, who will share the findings and the methodology from that study today. Next slide, Alice. So today, what we're actually really wanting to share is that although there is increased effort on parts of teachers having to cater to devising online strategies, we want to be able to figure out specific strategies that might especially work for underrepresented students. So a further consideration needs to be given to not only to the nuances and different ways of thinking, but to be able to support student engagement and how to do this best in these learning environments for underrepresented students. And I think I'm going to hand over now, where we'll look at the method and methodology that we used for the study.
Thanks, Pushpa, for that outline and setting the scene. Let me just get some clean screen there. So basically, appreciating the Australian University Accord and that drive for transformative and lasting reform, a range of colleagues came together. As a matter of fact, we did a number of us did what is it called? A round table at one of the earlier HERDSA conferences a few years ago, and said, hey, is anyone interested in joining a research group that are looking into this topic? And we got quite a lot of interest either in the research group or participating in the think tanks. And one of those, a number of colleagues from the research team represented a regional university as well, so brought that kind of area of expertise. And what we really wanted to do was to recognize the expertise in the room. And we wanted to draw on a range of experts to reconsider and reimagine the future of online education to better meet the needs of a number of underrepresented, the increasing number of represented students. And I think I would blame it on me for insisting that we think about these think tanks. And I had a hard time convincing my colleagues that we were going to use think tanks. Why don't we just use focus groups? Well, think tanks aren't really for this sort of thing. They're for more like corporate stuff and corporate experts. And I said, oh, baloney. Like basically, let's look at something really cool, because I think that experts, we need to give them the kudos. And think tanks elevates the insights in the room. So we decided to adopt an innovative methodological approach called think tanks to harness the different disciplinary perspectives. And we advertise that through a range of professional learning networks, including HERDSA, Access. Thanks to Access for all your support with the promotion of the research project, and LinkedIn. So think tank methodology, we're actually developing, I'm putting Associate Professor Christopher Fisher under the spotlight here, but we're actually developing a methodology paper on think tanks and using think tanks for scholarship. So keep a lookout for that. But basically, think tank methodology was the focus, and it's typically, as I said, typically considered for getting a group of experts together to advance knowledge and influence policy and practice. We thought that that was kind of pretty close to what we were trying to do with responding to the Accord and the emphasis and direction on widening the door to underrepresented students and the implication to policy and practice. So yeah, keep a lookout for that one. But basically, the think tank methodology served as a catalyst and a sounding board to bring experts together to share ideas, knowledge creation, and the identification of effective application to new knowledge. At the same time, the method of data collection, we believe, was World Cafe. And again, I thank particularly Christopher for suggesting this approach. I think a lot of you would have used World Cafes physically in a group, maybe at a conference or PD event. Well, we actually adopted that and used that online through the use of breakout rooms. And here were the 3 questions. We actually kind of started together, did some breakout rooms for 3 different questions. These are the questions that we used, one in each cycle of breakout rooms, and then we came together at the end to finish the session. But I love the first one in many ways, which we posed to the colleagues in breakout rooms. If Australian higher education was wildly successful in creating transformative and engaging online education for underrepresented students, what would be possible? How beautiful is that? And it just inspired a lot of innovative thinking and a number of other questions. So then we recorded all of those sessions and transcribed them and did a thematic analysis using pretty much Braun and Clark's 6 steps. And so we're going to share the results with you. And 5 key themes emerged. And we're currently writing 2 papers on these findings, one on overall the 5 findings, and also a paper that Jill might want to share quickly with you as part of her summary of belongingness and connectedness. So keep a lookout for 2 wonderful papers coming out of this research. The first theme, A number of experts reinforced that online learning and teaching for equity students needed to be meaningful and transformative. And a lot of this came from the first breakout or World Cafe question. Several points that resonated were recognizing the transformational nature of online learning and what that afforded for equity students now and for their future life trajectory and career. So we were saying that it's really important to communicate that sort of language in our online teaching and content and communication. Also conveying to students how their engagement in online learning has a potential to impact and make a difference to others, including the broader community. So there was that responsibility communication that our online communication content strategies can convey to students as well, particularly underrepresented in this study. And also ensuring that again, transformative, that the content that we're sharing through this online space, often for students that are time poor, connects and is relevant to students. And you can see speaker 3 here on day 2 shared. We would pick students up where they are and give them some tools and knowledge that really takes them to the next stage of their life journey, their professional journey. And another expert says, really transformative because it's having an impact on their daily life. So really thinking about that transformative power that the online communication strategies, content, and connection with our underrepresented students can have. And finally, others noted the importance of changing the mindset of actually online teachers in terms of different ways of thinking about equity students. And I thought that was really cool. Nuancing a way of thinking otherwise or reframing. And that would have a potential flow-on effect to the online engagement strategies and structures that were supported. So transforming the way that I think about and what they're capable of doing and being. How powerful and beautiful is that? I just love some of the insights from them. And they can upskill, reskill, and transfer their skills to others, like to change their industry and workforce, that transformative nature of the power of their actual learning and degree is being communicated. I'll pass it over to Nayana.
Thank you, Alice. Hello, everyone. As part of this group, this research group, excuse me, it's been wonderful to be a part of these think tanks and, learning from our colleagues who have expertise in online teaching, learning, and also with diversity and equity. And one of the themes that came across strongly was that diversity, it's not only about accepting, acknowledging the diversity of cohort, but even, celebrating it and tailoring our teaching so that, the people coming from diverse backgrounds are feel that they belong to this cohort, and that will help them engage. And, some of the strategies that came up was in relation to how, when we are putting people in groups, we have to be careful that not all the so-called diverse or underrepresented groups are lumped together in the same group, because that can be dangerous. Each one comes with their own unique challenges and strengths. So it's about equity and, mixing up the groups even, so that, the people from diverse groups don't feel singled out. And it's about recognizing the needs, but finding different ways to support them and appreciate how unique they are, because they also come with rich lived-in experience, life experience as well. And next slide, please. Alice. Yeah, thank you. And it was also like, thinking about not ascribing judgments in relation to, for example, we cannot force everybody to have cameras on, for example, or, they could be having other challenges. There could be internet issues, or there could be, transmission problems. I remember one of the things that recently came up in one of my online sessions that I had was where there was this wonderful student who was actually breastfeeding her baby, and she didn't want to have the camera on at that time. That doesn't mean that they're not engaging. It's just, giving people the space to accept that they're not ignoring you if you don't have the camera on, and just treating everybody equally, and or with the equity perspective on, and just helping them engage in the way they want to engage, and just be a facilitator to enable them to engage in the best way they can. And so over to Jill now.
Thank you, Naama. My theme 3 was belonging and connectedness. Now, belonging is getting a huge, a lot of people are interested in belonging, and there are various parts of belonging that are really interesting. For example, there's starting to be the difference between teachers developing ways to help students belong, but also, as Naama just pointed out, they're different. Every student is different, underrepresented or diverse or what, and that belonging is never secure, stable or established, but actually needs to be actively needs to be maintained by students. So it's a really interesting area that's growing and growing. But we found in our research that for online learning to become really successful, it needs to stimulate social connectedness better than it does currently, which is very difficult in online learning, particularly with underrepresented students. It's difficult, and if you ask people, if you asked us, and I've been asking people a lot this lately, do you prefer online or on campus? Inevitably, it comes up with on campus, but not all of us can do that, and we're all on Zoom at the moment. So some of the comments by the students said it would be good to emulate those sorts of network building things for students that have traditionally occurred with face-to-face on-campus learning. They created a closed LinkedIn network, which can be good also for the facilitation of employability. And so the semester where a big proportion of my students had a discovery moment that there are other people in this course and I can befriend them. There are lots of different ways, and it's also a bit about our non-verbal as well as verbal ways of connecting with students online, which is interesting. Other experts said, I really encourage the students to make connections. Like I'd say, I've got 3 guitarists in this class, etc., etc. I think we all use our different ways of connecting with students online, but we really need to think about them. And to think about, as Alice and Naama said before, about who the students are and where they're coming from. I've got a second slide, I think, Alice.
Yep.
Which is, and I'm going to read this one, adding some of yourself into the story of what you're teaching and trying to model a little bit, I'm an individual and this is what I bring, and these are the things from my background. Trying to promote a bit of that, a bit of the open space where students can feel like they can bring something of themselves. So having a little bit of vulnerability, introducing yourself, and in approachable and open ways is really helpful. I thought that was an excellent sort of quote, and sometimes we need to be perfect and know everything, but showing our vulnerability is really important in the online space. there is a lot more research, I think, in this space, and I look forward to hearing more. And I think it's something that we all need to be mindful of, particularly as Zoom takes up a whole lot of our lives. I'm going to hand it back to Alice, I think.
Yeah, and we're just going to share the last. Thanks so much, Jill. And as I said, keep a lookout for an associated paper with that particular theme of connectedness and belonging, which was one of the most significant themes and key points that was raised over and over again with the 3 different think tanks that were run. All right, just before we break up into some breakout rooms, given that the focus of the inquiry was seeking expert insights on how online teaching and engagement strategies may need to be nuanced, it made sense that quite a lot of the data and one of the major themes that came out was on a range of pedagogical considerations. And they related to aspects such as celebrating diversity through a strength-based pedagogical approach rather than a deficit model, adopting a highly personalized approach, and an openness to different ways of learning, and embedded in that and overlapping with that was principles of universal design. So you can see some of the points there. Experts also raised the importance of disestablishing assumptions regarding how teachers may perceive students' previous experiences of studying online. So that there was a lot raised about not coming through with an assumption that all students have expertise or would engage in a particular way. That reinforces a range of research, including a paper that Jill and I co-authored with colleagues on in providing explicit expectations. Frequently noted by experts were that in the 3 think tanks was that we need to have pedagogical approaches and strategies that support flexible conditions to accommodate diverse student circumstances. Words like cognitively self-paced, hyper-flexible learning came up over and over again. And finally, a number of think tank experts referred to universal design principles, which of course is a no-brainer, but we can't assume that all online teachers are aware of universal design principles. And so it's worth kind of reinforcing that came through, and that maybe it overlaps with a theme in the last theme about implementation. And one of the themes that came out there was on the need potentially for not only extra time, ideally, to support if we were to have an influx of underrepresented students studying online, but also the need for upskilling of academics and teachers of online, potentially even learning designers and other stakeholders that are supporting these students. So I'll leave it at that. I'll stop sharing. Hope that's sounding interesting. And I'm going to, is Nicole Brownlee here? Okay. I'm going to, well, we were going to go into some think tanks, but, or not think tanks, some breakout rooms, but looks like Nicole's not here to help us with that. So what I might do instead is just give us a few minutes. I'm going to put a Google Doc into the chat for everyone. And what I'd like us to do for a few minutes is you'll see that the Google Doc has a range of groups in there, but because we're not breaking into groups, I'd encourage us just to go into the Google Doc and just add your thoughts on one of these columns in terms of potential implications of what we've shared today, in terms of practice or in terms of policy or institutional application, or also is it prompting you to think about potential research to expand on what we've shared? So can I just leave us to maybe even turn our cameras off for a minute, and I might actually share the Google Doc and encourage you guys to add some thoughts. Don't worry about the groups, just add it anywhere. So as we're talking about those 5 themes.
Sorry,
Keen on
Alex, how would we add that, or do we open it up a separate document?
There's a link that I put in the chat.
Okay.
So just click on the link. There's quite a few people in there, and just start writing.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question, though.
Yes.
We'll just do that for a few minutes, and then we'll come together and share some insights. There's lots of extra room down the bottom, so just move the grid down if you want to add somewhere, because there's lots of action happening. Yeah. If you can, could you put your name just out of interest so I can follow that up in a minute? Say like someone's adding about student focus. Oh, there. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jill. Just add your name near your comment. This is good. Maybe as well as policy, maybe institutional implications. Like from what we just shared, is there something that you would like your institution to implement or to amend or attention on? What about while we're, who wrote that first one? Implementation is super important. Design it.
That was me. I'm still thinking.
All right. All right.
Did you have a question about it?
Yeah, just put your name there. So sorry.
Okay.
There's too many things. Is it Anna?
Yeah. I'll put my name on it. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, let's just chat while the Google Doc is powering on. Robbie, you might be next. So I'm just going to chat to Anna for a minute. Anna, what are you thinking there as you're adding that?
I'm trying to put it into diplomatic words, but how do we train people or provide them the support and professional development to make sure that the online learning or the opportunities for engagement are meaningful and, based on all these principles? Because I think even if the intention's there, either lack of resources, time, understanding, experience mean that sometimes, what the student experiences is very different.
I'm kind of thinking, I can't talk and write at the same time, but I'm kind of thinking from what you said that the implication for our research team potentially could be to actually write a principles paper or a framework paper based on those 5 themes or key insights, so that your PD could refer to those principles.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that would be cool. Robbie, do you want to expand on what you're thinking might be an opportunity for future research?
Sure, thanks, Alice. So naturally, every research study is concerned with sample size, and a lot of the focus so far has been on that first few days and weeks of engaging in online learning. But as it becomes more of a thing and more students, not just in Australia but across the world, are taking up online learning as the style du jour, the sample size considerations become less and less of a thing, and we learn a lot more about what works for who.
What?
What works for which kind of student.
So what are you suggesting as a research project then? To reach out to students and what works for students? Is that what you're looking?
It doesn't have to be limited to a particular country or a demographic or an equity group within a country. It could be more of a global approach.
I like that idea a lot. Yep, that's pretty cool. And what a number of us are looking at as a potential project moving forward is actually to either it's a transnational study or an Australasian study, is to reach out to a range of underrepresented students and invite them into some think tanks as experts, as experts of their own learning. And we think that would be really cool. So watch this space.
Agreed, thanks.
Who else would like to? What about Brooke? Brooke, what are you thinking there with regards to structures policies?
Is that with the UDL comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's often hard when you're developing courses or, completing tables for databases and things where you have to define your assessment approaches and things. And I think probably the work I've been doing recently, super interesting to try and find ways of encouraging course coordinators to consider how students can demonstrate they've met course learning outcomes, say, which might be in a different format to the assessments that they're defining at that stage. Are there other ways they could encourage students to maybe identify a different assessment approach or something on their own terms in a way that could be effective, and how that could be supported within databases and record keeping?
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, which has policy/institutional implications, Brooke, and I'm not too sure whether this is where you're coming from, but that whole aspect of the learning outcomes being linked to assessment and the implications of that, particularly to underrepresented students, and whether that can be done differently or explored or demonstrated some other way. Is that what you're...
Yeah, I think just a way that sort of recognises or offers a bit of flexibility for course coordinators to work within, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Naomi, you've got some serious research happening there in that space. You're on a roll. Any thoughts? What do you want to just elaborate on one of your ideas?
I think it's about, when we are considering diversity, we should go beyond the tokenistic approach to diversity and move away from the tick boxy kind of approach that often happens. What I'm thinking now, I'm not articulating what I'm saying very well, but it's more about the implementation aspect, policy aspect, as well as on ground, when teachers, especially when these are predominantly Western universities, but we have to be mindful that we have students coming from different backgrounds. Say, for example, if it's the Pacific nations, for example, their whole education focus is about the community and the collective. And so the student might not want to come forward or put themselves forward as an individual because that is not respectful in their community. So it's about thinking more widely about, and while I understand we are preparing our students in a lot of professional courses, preparing them for workforce in the Western world, it's also mindful that if you want to get them engaged, it has to be a more bigger, broader conversation and get their voices so that it can help us as educators focus on our own implicit biases and help us improve and grow.
Thank you, Nana, for trying to articulate that. There's so much potential. And as I'm looking at your ideas in that research column, colleagues, I'm just so heartened that sharing this particular study and findings inspires, motivates, triggers the aha for potential future scholarship opportunities that you might have. So I'm just so glad to see some of those coming through. We're just running out of time. I'm just going to look at there's quite a lot of writing around the upskilling of online teachers. And Brond, do you want to elaborate on your thoughts? Particularly, let's kind of try to keep that within underrepresented students if possible. What are your thoughts there? I'm not too sure if Anne's still with us.
Sorry, I've had my mute off.
That's all
Thanks,
right.
Alice. I think that it's such a dynamic space, online learning, and the currency of available tools for professionals, for teachers. It's difficult for them to, for teachers to stay up to date with the available tools, and then the institutional provision of those tools to be able to use them and use them, and not just use them. We know what's available, but the time to be confident and competent in using those tools with students who, if we focus on equity students, then students who mightn't be really confident themselves with, annotating or getting into a Google Doc or getting a QR code on their phone and so forth. So both sides of the fence, the teacher's confidence and then also the student's confidence and the tools that they're working with as well. They may not even have a keyboard that they're working from. Perhaps they're, working from their phone when they're involved in a Zoom. So they may not have the tools to be able to engage with platforms that we might make available to them. So I think that's a challenge.
Thank you.
From both sides.
Thank you, and some excellent points there. I'll just take Sim.
Yes, that's me, Sim.
Yeah, Sim, as a last sharing for today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation and your research. I think it's really timely and very informative. And I particularly like your strength-based approach because that's where we're coming from, especially in our enabling space. And I guess, one of the things that I wanted to say too is that some of the online strategies to engage students don't have to be so complicated. Some of those really simple things that humanize us as educators, you're talking about vulnerability. I mean, there's strength through vulnerability, and that aligns with that strength-based approach. So I just wanted to say that it doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but it does have to be intentional.
And it does like that word, intentional.
Yes, it does have to be intentional, and it has to be really well considered, Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent points to finish with. I'm just going to share my screen again as we wrap up, if I can. and I'm happy to maybe send everyone the PDF of the slides from today. I've got everyone's email addresses there, so I'm happy to send those. And just the reference list from today for you guys. And I'm just moving that out of the way. We've done the breakout rooms, kind of. I think I did some good ad-libbing there. And you guys did some great sharing of some ideas. And so that worked well. Just a reminder that the HERDSA conference next year is in Singapore. The pre-conference workshops have already been approved and accepted now. So basically, congratulations to those that got accepted for a pre-conference workshop. But there's still time to put in your research abstracts, either for roundtables or for a showcase presentation, etc. So I think they close just sometime in January. So keep a lookout for that. There are already calls for abstracts to be submitted. Would love to see you there. Great food, great company, great research, and great organization to be with. So that's that. And thank you so much for your time today and your interest in the topic. And we'd love to, I'm stepping down from the chairing of the online engagement special interest group. But I know that we are very, very keen, and the colleagues that are continuing with that special interest group are keen on hearing from anyone that's got some great research to share moving forward into 2026. So please email me or through the SIG to share if you're interested in communicating and presenting in 2026. Thanks so much and have a wonderful rest of the week. Thanks for joining TED today. Take care. Bye.